Hey, good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Thanks again for tuning us in with B&B Hockey Talk. I'm Aaron Bloxel with my co-host, Mr. Matthew Balzer. And today we are continuing our 31 teams in 31 days with the juggernaut, Nashville Predators. The number one team in the NHL last year. And just actually previewing this team, I was absolutely shocked by the depth that these guys have for this potential roster. So let's get right into it, Matthew. Let's start talking about their forwards, the potential lineups, the potential line combinations that they have, and some of that just absolute amazing depth that they have.
Yeah, first, just a shout out to David Poyle for organizing this team. Just through the draft, through trades. He was the general manager of the year. Just an amazing job bringing this team together. Their top line I have as Philippe Forsberg, Ryan Johansson, and Victor Arvidsson. Philippe Forsberg, as everybody likes to bring up, one of the biggest steals in a trade. Martin Erat for Philippe Forsberg when he got traded to Washington is really one of the big up-and-coming superstars in the NHL. And Ryan Johansson, who they brought in a trade with Columbus, the Columbus Blue Jackets for Seth Jones, who will be probably up for the Norris Trophy this coming year. But bringing in Johansson, it gives them that first legit first line center that they had really struggled to find over the years, because usually they'd done it by line production, not having one consistent really good player. Just going from one to the first to the fourth line in balanced scoring. And Victor Arvidsson, he's a small, little, tenacious guy, but he had 29 goals and 61 points last year, and he's proven from last year, where he had 30 goals and 60 points, that this guy has filthy hands. If you look up some of his highlights, man, this guy can dangle for days. And the second line, I think he'll be up for the Calder Trophy. They signed him late out of the KHL, their first rounder, and an absolute steal in the first round. I think he was 30th pick. Eli Tolvanen. He had 36 points in 49 games in the K this past year, and they signed him late towards the end of last year. And he only got into a couple of games and sat out all the playoffs. But I think this guy should get a top six role with his offensive potential. Kyle Turris, who they got in the three-way trade with Colorado and Ottawa, and they signed him to a nice long-term deal, should solidify that second line spot, along with Craig Smith, who had a good bounce back year from the year before, getting 51 points last year. And should provide some good depth on the wing and consistent scoring. The third line I have is Kevin Fiala, Nick Bonino, and Cal Yarncroc. Fiala, which I think the year before in the playoffs when he broke his leg, he was doing really well there before he broke his leg. And this year he continued off his rookie season with a really good year, playing mostly on the second line with Turris and Smith. I think this guy can continue to get into that 50-plus point range. Nick Bonino struggled a little bit after coming over from Pittsburgh. He only had 25 points last year, and I think he could get up to 40 points if he does get a good bounce back here. And Cal Yarncroc, who I forget if it was a trade or through waivers from the Detroit Red Wings, is another good young offensive player coming up in their system. And then the fourth line I have is Ryan Hartman, Colton Sissons, and Austin Watson. Watson, he did have that domestic charge that he pleaded guilty to, if you've been following. So I'm not sure how things will go for the start of the season, how Nashville will handle that. But if he is in the lineup, he is a big physical presence that can put the puck in the net. And Colton Sissons could potentially move up in the lineup over Nick Bonino. He's actually been a good up-and-comer as well, and a good draft choice. And as the extra forwards, I have as Mikko Salamaki, who's just more of a plug-and-play player, brings a bit of energy on the fourth line. And Frederick Goudreau, who, if you remember a couple years ago when Nashville went to the Stanley Cup Finals, had a couple big games for them in the finals, played most of the year in the American League, but was close to a point-a-game player and could get some playing time this year.
I really think that Fiala will have a breakout season this year. And like you mentioned, he broke his leg in that incredible playoff run a couple of years ago. He just looks like an absolute guy that's ready to just break out and become a potential star in this league. The depth that these guys have is incredible, but that top line, this is probably the first time in forever for Nashville that they actually have an actual legitimate number one line. And those three guys are just absolute studs. They're going to have a lot of success. But I'm going to give a shout-out to a depth forward that they signed out of Colorado. Again, one of the best roller hockey players I've ever seen play the game, Rocco Grimaldi. Looking forward to seeing him potentially get in a handful of games if there's some injuries. Another shout-out to Austin Watson, as you know, Don Cherry's favorite playoff player. Just an absolute tank. And if this guy continues to develop at the pace that he's going to be at, he is going to be an incredible force to reckon with. So let's get into their defense. Just absolute studs on this defense as well, at great pricing for a lot of them. Like you said, David Boyle just has done an incredible job with this team. But the big four is what a lot of teams are modeling after now. But these guys can log a lot of ice time. Last year, they were missing one of them for about half the season, came back late in the season and for their playoff run. But Roman Josi, Ryan Ellis, we'll start off with those two guys. They both are incredibly gifted offensive players. They really lead from the back end. They're both great puck movers. The second pairing is Matthias Ekholm and PK Subban, and in my opinion, the best shutdown line in the entire NHL, playing against any line. Both of those guys do an incredible job, both physical players. And then they signed free agent, former Nashville Predator, former Vancouver Canuck, Dan Hamhuis, who will fit in absolutely wonderful on this line or on this team. And then, of course, former Vancouver Canuck and former Dan Hamhuis partner, Yannick Weber, is still with Nashville. He'll probably be switching it out a little bit with Matt Irwin throughout the year, who's their seventh guy. And then their depth guy, who played a handful of games last year, Anthony Potato, will be around in case of any injuries. But this defense is incredible. What do you like about them, and what do you see with them?
Oh yeah, just the mobility of their back end and the offensive ability of these guys, like Roman Josi. Just to go over contract money wise, that we bring up, Josi is only making $4 million for the next 2 years right now, and he had 53 points in 75 games, and he has been consistently around that 50 to 60 point mark over the past few years, and I think could potentially rival Subban for a Norris candidate this coming year. Ryan Ellis is only making $2.5 million, and in the half season he had 32 points in 44 games, but he will be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year.
Think about that contract for a sec, Canuck fans. That's $250,000 less than Ben Hutton makes.
Yes, just unbelievable. And then along with Matthias Ekholm, he doesn't produce as much offense as the other guys, but he still had 10 goals and 34 points, and he's only making $3.75 million over the next 4 years. And then Subban being the big getter with the $9 million a year, but that contract was given by the Montreal Canadiens. But that Subban for Weber deal, just straight up was an absolute steal for Nashville. Just Subban, just the energy he brings in that back end. Sometimes it can get a little bit over the top sometimes, but he's one of the best defensemen in the NHL.
And, of course, now dating Olympic gold medalist Lindsey Vonn.
Yes.
So let's touch base. I mean, again, they have some of the best depth in the entire league. Let's talk about their goaltending. I mean, they got some incredible goalies. And you being a goalie, I'm sure you're a big fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Pekka Rinne just winning the Vezina Trophy this year, and I think deservedly so over Connor Hellebuck and Andrei Vasilevsky. I think he was the most consistent goalie from the start of the season to the end of the year, and until in that second round in the playoffs where he was a little bit up and down in his play. But 42 wins in 59 games, a .927 save percentage, and 8 shutouts. This guy was the rock for the Nashville Predators last year, and just the way they build their team, they go goalies, defense, and then forwards. That's how they build their team, and they've always been really good defense, a good defensive structure, like we brought up with the Minnesota Wild, just with how they play. And then their backup goalie, who will be pushing Rinne for starts this year, and was named to the All-Rookie team, UC Saros. He is a rare goalie, being under 6 feet, but this guy can really play in that. He had 11 wins in 26 games and also had 3 shutouts in a .925 save percentage. And Nashville locked him up to a 3-year extension at only $1.5 million a year. And with Rinne being an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year, you could see Rinne's money go down a little bit, or they could push forward with Saros as a starting goalie next year at an incredible deal, because I think he could be the next breakout goalie in the NHL.
Yeah, for me, as good as their goalies are, I think as any type of goalie, having that defense in front of you would just make life so easy. And it's interesting, you touched on something about David Poile and how he builds his team. And I remember back when he was the general manager of the Washington Capitals in the early 90s, he had a team that was always just absolutely stacked at the back end. I mean, you think about those early 90s teams in Washington with Rod Langway and Kevin Hatcher and Phil Housley and Calle Johansson. They just had endless amounts of defense. Al Iafrate. I mean, they were built at the back, and he continues to do that. We talked about their stacked defense and one big prospect up front. They do have a big prospect on defense as well. Let's get into some of their prospects. What do you have for us? And go over a handful of them before we wrap this up.
All right. So this will be a bit of a quicker run, just because we've already named a couple of their bigger ones. Eli Tolvanen being their biggest one. Frederick Gaudreau, who should be pushing for a spot. But their next big up-and-coming defenseman is Dante Fabro, a first-rounder in 2016. He played for Canada at the World Juniors. This guy should, even if Ryan Ellis does leave, could fill that spot basically immediately. He had 29 points in 38 games for Boston in the NCAA. Just another great up-and-coming defenseman, which is just crazy to think. He will be going back to college this year. He's taking the longer run, going through all his years in college before he comes and turns pro. Another defenseman, Alexander Carrier. He had 28 points in 73 games in the American League last year, and he did have close to around 40 points, I believe, the year before. I think he will, just with all the depth ahead of him, should be playing another year in the American League. And Yakov Trenin, a second rounder in 2015, a centerman, had 16 points in 44 games in the American League. This is another prospect that they're pretty high on. I know he didn't have that many points last year, but he could be another up-and-coming guy in years to come.
Excellent. Last year, first in the NHL with 117 points, lost in an incredible playoff series between them and the number 2 team, the Winnipeg Jets. And we were talking before we went on air, I believe the Winnipeg Jets ran out of gas after beating Nashville. And just, Las Vegas was they couldn't keep up with them because they used everything possible to upset the Nashville Predators. Nashville, in my opinion, is going to have an even better season this year with a healthy Ryan Ellis, with better depth this year and some of the signings that they've had. I see them finishing around 120 to 125 points. That's going to be an incredible record that they're going to have. And you heard it here first, folks. I think they're going to be the Stanley Cup champions. What do you think, Matt?
I know, yeah. Between them and Winnipeg, I think this year will be the potential Stanley Cup champion this year, or the Cup finalists in the West this year. It will be tough. I think I have Winnipeg actually over Nashville in the Central, but it won't be by much. It could go either way. Mostly probably coming down to head-to-head matches between them. But Nashville, just from as we talk, from goaltending to the defense to the forwards, and Pierre Laviolette bringing in as the coach, just all their systems, just their play, they're one of the best in the NHL.
Absolutely, they're a team from top to bottom that is just absolutely built and will continue to be building for years to come. I don't see any time soon in the near future where Nashville's going to be weakening. So anyhow, thanks again, guys, for watching. We're going to be back again tomorrow with our 31 teams in 31 days with, I believe, the New York Islanders.
The New Jersey Devils.
They come first. Okay, New Jersey Devils tomorrow.
All New York-based teams.
All of the New York teams are coming up. So we're going to finish the week with those guys. Thanks again for watching, everybody. This is B&B Hockey Talk. Remember to hit the like button, comment, share, love us on subscribe to us on YouTube, and don't forget to tell your friends about our page. Introduce them to our page, help them like our page. Again, I'm Aaron Bloxel with Matthew Balzer. Thanks again so much for watching. Have a wonderful evening, and we will see you guys all tomorrow.